She said he was useless. She mocked his taxi job. She walked away from her crying babies and never looked back. Years later, life forced her to come back and face the family she once abandoned. This is the story of John, a humble man who lost everything, but refused to give up. The sun was bright that Tuesday morning as John adjusted his tie in front of the small mirror in their bedroom. He smiled at his reflection, then turned to look at his wife, Agnes, who was sitting on the bed rubbing her growing belly. She was 5 months pregnant with twins, and her face glowed with the beauty that comes with carrying new life. "I'm off to work, my love," John said, walking over to kiss her forehead. "What would you like me to bring home for dinner?" Agnes smiled up at him. "Surprise me. You always know what I like." John worked as an accounting clerk at Morrison & Associates, one of the top firms in Accra. The pay was very good, and it allowed them to live comfortably in their nice 3-bedroom apartment. John never missed a chance to spoil his wife with expensive jewelry, beautiful dresses, and fine dining. She was his queen, and he treated her like one. Their dreams were simple but sweet. They wanted a bigger house when the twins arrived. Maybe John could get promoted to senior accountant, and they could live peacefully watching their children grow. Life felt perfect. The future looked bright. But life has a way of changing everything in one single moment. That evening, John walked through their apartment door holding a white envelope. His usual bright smile was gone. His eyes were red and swollen. His shoulders were bent like someone carrying a heavy load. Agnes looked up from the couch where she was watching television. She noticed the envelope in his hand and the strange look on his face. "John, what is that?" she asked, pointing to the envelope. John sat down slowly beside her. His hands were shaking as he opened the envelope and pulled out the letter inside. "They downsized," he whispered. "I'm out." Agnes's face changed immediately. The soft, loving expression disappeared. She folded her arms across her chest and stared at him with cold eyes. "What do you mean you're out?" "Speak clearly, John. The company let some of us go today. They said they needed to cut costs." She turned away without a word and walked into their bedroom. That night, they ate in silence. John tried to talk, but Agnes was cold. 3 long, painful months passed. John sent out over 50 job applications and went to offices every day, knocking on doors, begging for any kind of work. But everywhere he went, the answer was the same: "We are not hiring." Their savings account quickly became empty. The landlord came knocking every week, demanding his rent. His voice got louder each time until he finally said, "If you can't pay, you must leave." So they packed their belongings and moved to a single room in a crowded neighborhood. The room was so small, the fan barely worked, and they had to share a toilet with other families. With each passing day, Agnes's love turned into something ugly. Her sweet words became sharp knives that cut deep into John's heart. "Is it food we'll eat from your promises?" she would shout. "You want me to stay and rot with you in this small room? I used to live like a queen, and now I'm living like a beggar." John found work as a delivery rider for a small restaurant. The pay was very little, but it was something. Every morning, he would ride his old bicycle through the busy streets of Accra, delivering food to people who had the money he once had. He saved every cedi he could. After 4 months of working day and night, he finally had enough money to buy an old taxi. It was not beautiful, but it could move. The engine made strange noises and the seats were torn, but it was his. It was hope. From early morning until late at night, John drove his taxi through the streets of Accra. His hands became rough from gripping the steering wheel. His back ached from sitting for so many hours, but he never stopped. This taxi was the only thing he had left to provide for his family. But to Agnes, the taxi was not hope. It was embarrassment. "My friends see you driving that old taxi," she would complain. "They laugh at me. They ask me why I married a poor taxi driver." The twins were born on a rainy Thursday evening. John held them for the first time and cried tears of joy. They were perfect, beautiful, healthy boys. He named them Kojo and Kabi. As he looked at their tiny faces, he made a promise to give them a good life. But Agnes looked at the babies and saw only more problems. More mouths to feed, more expenses they could not afford. One evening, John returned home tired and dusty. He opened the door and found Agnes packing her clothes into a bag. "Where are you going?" he asked. "To someone who knows how to take care of a woman," she replied without looking at him. "I can't do this anymore, John. I'm not meant for this kind of suffering." John felt his world crashing down. But what about the twins? They're not even 1 year old. They need their mother. You can keep them, she shouted. You're the one who wants to suffer. Let me go and enjoy life while I'm still young and beautiful. Agnes, please, don't do this. For the children, she cut him off. You are no longer a man, John. You are useless. My friends are married to bank managers, engineers, doctors. And me? I'm married to a taxi driver who can't even afford to buy meat for soup. She picked up her bag and walked toward the door. John grabbed her arm gently. Please, he begged. We can work this out. Things will get better. I promise you. She looked at him with eyes full of disgust. I wasted 3 years of my life on you. I'm not wasting any more. The door slammed behind her. John stood in silence. The babies stirred. One began to cry. He rushed to them, picked them up gently, one on each arm. He sat on the cold floor, their small heads resting on his shoulders. He rocked them slowly as tears rolled down his face. I'm here, he whispered. Daddy is here. I won't leave you, I promise. John had no one to help him. His own parents had died when he was young, and he had grown up in an orphanage. Agnes's family had never liked him, and now they would never help him. He had to learn everything. How to change diapers, how to prepare baby food at 3 a.m. when both twins were hungry, how to sing lullabies when his own heart was broken. Every morning, John would wake up at 5 a.m. He would feed the twins, bathe them, and dress them in their cleanest clothes. Then he would wrap them warmly, place them gently in the back seat of the taxi, and go to work. The back seat became their home away from home. John had placed soft pillows there and hung colorful toys from the ceiling. When the twins slept, they looked like angels sleeping in their moving nursery. Some passengers refused to enter when they saw the babies. Why are there babies in your car? One woman complained loudly. Is this a creche or a taxi? I'm not riding with crying children. What kind of father brings babies to work? Another passenger asked rudely. This is not professional. But others were kind. A few elderly women would smile and bless the babies. Some young mothers would give John advice about caring for infants. John endured all of it. The insults, the rejections, the strange looks. He fed the twins before he fed himself. He bought them new clothes before he bought himself a new shirt. Every night they would return to their small room. John would bathe the twins in a small plastic basin, singing softly to make them laugh. He would rock them gently until they fell asleep, then place them carefully on the bed while he slept on the floor. The months passed slowly. The twins grew bigger and stronger. They learned to sit up, then to crawl, then to say their first words. Dada was the first word both of them spoke, and John cried with joy when he heard it. But then came the day that almost broke him completely. It was a cold, rainy evening in December. The twins had been coughing all day, and by nighttime, their small bodies were burning with fever. John touched their foreheads and felt panic rise in his chest. They were too hot, too sick. He wrapped them in blankets and drove straight to the nearest pharmacy. The rain was falling hard, and the windshield wipers of his old taxi could barely keep up. Please, he begged the pharmacist, I need medicine. They have fever. Very high fever. The woman looked at the twins and nodded. They need antibiotics and fever reducers. The drugs will cost 65 cedis. John reached into his wallet with shaking hands. He counted the money slowly. 20 cedis. 30 cedis. That was all. I only have 30 cedis, he said quietly. Please, can you help me? They're very sick. The pharmacist looked at him with sympathy, but she shook her head. I'm sorry, I can't give you the medicine without full payment. John stepped outside and stood under the small shed by the door, holding his crying sons close. Rain poured around him. He looked up at the sky and whispered, God, please help me. Then a gentle voice came. Excuse me, sir. Do you need help? John turned. A young woman stood under a blue umbrella. She wore a plain gown and rubber sandals. Her face looked calm, but her eyes were filled with worry. I'm Grace Mensa, she said. I teach at the primary school nearby. I saw you in the pharmacy with your babies. They look very sick. John nodded, too tired and worried to speak properly. Let me help, Grace said simply. She walked into the pharmacy and paid for the medicine without asking any questions. Then she helped John back to his taxi. Give them the medicine every 6 hours, she explained, and make sure they drink plenty of water. John looked at her with tears in his eyes. Thank you. I don't know how to repay you. Grace smiled. Everyone needs help sometimes. As she was about to leave, she noticed how helpless John looked. Let me follow you home. Make sure the babies are okay. That simple act of kindness was the beginning of something beautiful. At John's small room, Grace helped him give the medicine to the twins. She showed him how to use a damp cloth to bring down their fever. She stayed until both babies were sleeping peacefully. Grace continued to check on John after that rainy day. She would stop by sometimes with baby wipes or a small flask of porridge. She never made him feel small. She only smiled and helped where she could. Soon, Grace learned about John's situation. She saw how difficult it was for him to work properly while taking care of two small children. I have an idea, Grace said one evening. Why don't you bring the twins to my school during the day? We have a nursery section for the teacher's children. I can look after them while you work. John stared at her in disbelief. You would do that for us? Of course. This way you can work properly during the day and the children will be safe and happy. And so began a new routine. Every morning, John would drop the twins at Grace's school. She would feed them, play with them, and make sure they napped properly. In the evening, John would pick them up, and they would go home together. John could now work during the day without worry. He could take longer trips, earn more money, and provide better for his children. The twins loved being at the school. Over time, John and Grace became close friends. He would drive her home after picking up the twins, and they would talk about life, their dreams, and their pasts. One evening, Grace opened up about her own painful story. I was raised by my aunt after my parents died in a car accident when I was 12, she began. My aunt and my cousin Linda were very cruel to me. John listened quietly, holding the sleeping twins in his arms. When I was 22, I fell in love with a man named Samuel. We were planning to get married, but one day I came home to find him in bed with Linda. Grace's eyes filled with tears. They had been seeing each other behind my back for months. Linda laughed at me and said, Samuel never loved you. Who would want to marry someone with no family, no background? Samuel didn't even apologize, Grace continued. He just said, you should have known someone like me would never marry someone like you. Grace wiped her tears. That night, I packed my few belongings and left. I came to Accra with nothing but hope. I worked as a cleaner, then as a nanny. One day, an older teacher saw how good I was with children and helped me get a job at the school. She looked at John and the twins. Helping you and these beautiful boys gave my life new meaning. For the first time in years, I felt like I was part of a real family. John reached out and held her hand gently. We're grateful for you every day. Years passed quietly and peacefully. John still drove his taxi, but now he had regular clients who paid well. The twins, Kojo and Kabi, grew into smart, respectful young boys. They won awards at school for their good behavior and excellent grades. The teachers at Grace's school began to notice how close she and John had become. Some of them, especially the older ones, were not happy about it. Grace, you're still young and beautiful, one teacher told her. Don't waste yourself on a man with baggage. Find someone without children, someone who can give you your own fresh start. Another teacher added, that man has 2 children and an ex-wife. You deserve better than that. You should look for a rich man, maybe a banker or a doctor. But Grace just smiled whenever they gave her this advice. John is not baggage, she would reply firmly. He's a blessing. And those children are not a burden. They're gifts. The teachers would shake their heads and say, you'll regret this decision. Mark our words. But Grace was clear about her feelings. She had come to love John deeply. She loved his kindness, his dedication to his children, his honest work, and his gentle heart. She had also come to love Kojo and Kabi as if they were her own sons. So when John proposed in a small restaurant, Grace did not hesitate to say yes to him. The twins, Kojo and Kabi, were excited for Grace to be their mom. They hugged her tight and called her Mom. They had a simple wedding ceremony attended by close friends. Even though they had little, they were all happy. Grace took very good care of the family and their small home. One bright Monday morning, John was driving through the busy city when he saw a well-dressed man at the airport. The man was wearing an expensive suit and carrying a leather briefcase. Airport to Accra, the man said as he got into John's taxi, barely looking at him. During the entire trip, the man spoke on his phone, discussing business deals. He didn't greet John, didn't say thank you, and treated him like he was invisible. When they reached the office building, the man paid his fare and hurried out, still talking on his phone. After he left, John was cleaning his car when he found a small flash drive on the back seat. He knew it must belong to the businessman. John drove back to the office building and approached the security guards. "Please, I need to see the man I just dropped off," John explained politely. "He left something in my car." The security guards looked at John's old taxi and his simple clothes and laughed. "You? Come inside this building? This is a company, not a place for beggars." "I'm trying to return something that belongs to one of your clients," John explained patiently. "Get out of here before we call the police," the guard threatened. John left, feeling hurt and angry, but he didn't throw away the flash drive. The next day, John returned to the building. Again, the same guards refused to let him enter. They were even ruder than before. Just then, a black SUV pulled up to the building. The same businessman from the day before stepped out, looking stressed and worried. John quickly got out of his taxi and called out, "Sir! Sir, the flash drive!" The man turned around, confused. When he saw John, recognition dawned on his face. "You! The taxi driver! You found it?" John nodded and handed him the flash drive. The businessman's face lit up with relief and joy. He grabbed John's hands and shook them vigorously. "You saved my company," he exclaimed. "That drive contains the only copy of a major contract proposal. I've been looking for it everywhere. I thought I had lost millions of CDs." He turned to the security guards who were watching with their mouths open. "This man is a hero, and you refuse to let him enter? You could have cost me my business." The businessman put his arm around John's shoulder. "Come with me. I want to talk to you properly." In his spacious office on the 15th floor, the businessman, who introduced himself as Mr. Osei, listened as John told him his story. He was touched by John's honesty and his dedication to his children. "You could have kept that drive and demanded money from me," Mr. Osei said, "but instead you came back twice, even when my guards treated you badly." John smiled humbly. "It wasn't mine to keep, sir." Mr. Osei was quiet for a long moment, thinking. "Come back tomorrow at 10 a.m. I have something for you." The next morning, John arrived at the office building promptly. Mr. Osei handed John a set of car keys and a document. "What is this?" John asked, confused. "The keys to a compound with 20 brand new cars," Mr. Osei replied with a smile. "And the document gives you the right to start your own transport company. I've already arranged the licensing and registration." John stared at him in disbelief. "Sir, I can't accept this. It's too much." "You can and you will," Mr. Osei said firmly. "Honest people like you are rare in this world. I want to invest in your future." John's hands shook as he held the keys. Tears filled his eyes. "Thank you, sir. I promise I won't disappoint you." That evening, John returned home speechless. Grace and the boys were waiting for him, wondering why he was so late. When John showed them the keys and explained what had happened, Grace screamed with joy. The twins hugged their father tightly, and all four of them cried happy tears together. 8 years passed like a beautiful dream. John's transport company, Grace & Sons Transport, grew from 20 cars to over 80 vehicles. He provided jobs for many young men who, like him, just needed a chance to prove themselves. They moved from their small room into a beautiful house in an upscale estate. The house had 6 bedrooms, a large living room, a modern kitchen, and a beautiful garden where Grace grew flowers and vegetables. Grace had become the head mistress of her own school, New Hope Primary School, which John had helped her build. The twins, now 18 years old, had won full scholarships to study abroad. Kojo was studying medicine at a university in England, and Kabi was studying business administration in Canada. 2 years after their wedding, Grace had given birth to a beautiful baby girl they named Abigail. She was the joy of the entire family. Kojo and Kabi completed their studies and returned home as successful professionals. Kojo became a renowned surgeon, and Kabi started his own construction company. The family was happy, successful, and content. One sunny morning, as John was driving past the gate of his transport company, he noticed a commotion near the security post. A woman was kneeling on the ground, begging the security guards for a job. "Please," the woman was saying, "I can clean, I can cook, I can do anything. I just need work. I haven't eaten in 2 days." John parked his car and walked closer. When he saw the woman's face, his heart stopped. It was Agnes. Her hair was untidy and uncombed. Her clothes were old and dirty. Her face was thin, and her eyes were sunken. She looked like someone who had been suffering for a very long time. She turned and saw John approaching. When she recognized him, she froze with shock and shame. "John," she whispered. John looked at her calmly. The anger he had once felt was gone, replaced by pity and sadness. "Come with me," he said quietly. He led her to his office. Agnes sat down and began to weep. "I'm sorry," she cried. "I'm so sorry for everything I did to you and the children." John sat behind his desk and waited for her to speak. "The man I ran to, he was married," she continued through her tears. "His wife was a very powerful woman, a lawyer. She chased me out of their house and made sure I couldn't find work anywhere." Agnes wiped her eyes. "I've been living on the streets for 3 years. I've begged for food, slept in uncompleted buildings. I lost everything, John." She looked up at him with desperate eyes. "Please, I'm begging you. Let me see the twins. Just once. I know I don't deserve it, but they're my sons too." John studied her face for a long moment. "They don't remember you, Agnes. In their minds, Grace is their mother. She's the one who raised them, loved them, and sacrificed for them. I know I have no right to call myself their mother, but please, just let me see them. Let me apologize to them." John was quiet for several minutes. Finally, he spoke. "Come back tomorrow at 3 p.m., but understand this. They have every right to reject you, and if they do, you must accept it." That evening, John sat down with Grace and explained what had happened. Grace listened quietly. "What do you think we should do?" John asked her. "The boys are old enough to make their own decisions," Grace replied. "They have a right to meet her if they want to." The next day was a Saturday. The twins were at home resting with their little sister Abigail, who was now 6 years old. At exactly 6 p.m., the doorbell rang. John opened the door and let Agnes inside. She stepped into the beautiful mansion and looked around in amazement. The house was everything she had once dreamed of having. The twins looked up when she entered. They were now tall, handsome young men. They looked at the strange woman with polite but distant curiosity. "Kojo, Kabi," John said gently. "This is Agnes, your biological mother." The twins exchanged glances. They had known this day might come someday. Agnes fell to her knees in front of them, tears streaming down her face. "I am sorry," she wept. "Please forgive me. I was young and foolish. I made the worst mistake of my life when I left you." Kojo spoke first. His voice was calm and mature. "We hold no grudge against you. We understand that life is difficult and people make mistakes. But we want you to know that we already have a mother." He gestured toward Grace, who was standing nearby holding little Abigail. "This is our mother," Kabi added. "She raised us, loved us, and never left us. She's the only mother we've ever known." Grace stepped forward. "Boys, she's your biological mother. You can choose to have a relationship with her if you want to." Kojo shook his head gently. "We appreciate that she wants to apologize, and we forgive her. But our family is complete." Agnes looked around the room. At John, who had built success from nothing. At Grace, who was surrounded by love. At the twins, who had grown into successful young men despite her abandonment. At little Abigail, who was playing happily. She saw everything she had walked away from. All the love, success, and happiness that could have been hers if she had just been patient and supportive. "I understand," she said quietly, standing up. "I lost the right to be called your mother long ago." John walked her to the door. Before she left, he turned to her with an offer. "I have a cleaning position at one of my company branches. It comes with a place to stay and a decent salary. If you want it, you can have it." Agnes looked at him with surprise and gratitude. "You would do that for me? After everything I did?" John nodded. Everyone deserves a second chance to rebuild their life. She accepted the job quietly and gratefully. She spent the rest of her life reflecting on her past actions and trying to make amends. Years passed peacefully. John and Grace's family continued to grow and prosper. On quiet evenings, John would sit in his garden watching his children play, grateful not just for the prosperity that had come, but for the family that had stayed together through the hardest times. They lived happily ever after. This story reminds us, never look down on someone because of where they are now. People rise, life changes, and those who stay loyal are often the ones who build empires. Which part of this story touched your heart the most? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring African stories. See you in the next one.